All right, folks, I'm here today talking about the very auspicious astrology that we have that's also on the horizon. When I did my March forecast, I talked about all the powerful planets that we have in the sky right now. And I'm going to be talking about that and how there could even be, I think, perhaps a cure, if not a total cure, because they might not have an antidote for this coronavirus, but maybe a treatment plan or some very, some very good news and some very powerful auspiciousness is ahead. I already know there's powerful auspiciousness ahead because I do astrology and we read things like this. And that means that our whole lives are not now defined by this thing that has us in this, sort of grip of fear. There's amazing, planetary energy right now in the midst of what's uncertain and stressful. That's still there. And I'm going to talk about that. But in particular, a couple of auspicious connections in around the end of April that I want to highlight and show you. So let me just get to the chart here. Let me make the chart a little bigger here and show you what we have. So this is the chart of today. This is March 17th, right? And we can see that we have Saturn in its own sign. Okay, Jupiter is in its own sign. So these two planets are quite powerful because they're in their own signs. When planets are in their own signs or their exalted signs, they're very powerful to really deliver their results. So Saturn is really powerfully delivering his results right now, which is to say we need to have a strong structure, a strong, good boundaries. We need to take things seriously. Notice how these things are very powerful in the world right now, right? Oh, by the way, before I forget, I do just want to say, if you're just starting to watch this, if you want, like, subscribe, and get notified of videos here that I release, you can go ahead and do that. Like the channel, like this video, and subscribe as well if you want. I just want to make sure to say that. But we have this right now. We have Saturn and Jupiter both in their own signs. Now, Jupiter is also really trying to connect us with higher teachings, higher wisdom, really a higher purpose. Again, if you're losing your purpose in these times, then there's also much more of a greater possibility of finding a purpose, finding the deeper meaning and purpose behind the things that are happening in the world right now. And that's there. And again, that wisdom is really flowing if you're listening to it. Okay? Just because there's stressful things externally does not mean that isn't also happening. That's happening in enormous abundance right now. And those of you who do have spiritual practices, who have lived a life where you look for the higher meaning and purpose and philosophies and put these teachings into practice, especially because Mars is also there, you know what I'm talking about. You know that right now it's a very inspiring time, very uplifting, inspiring, hopeful. And I'll get to that a little bit more, even in the ways that we're seeing it now, with people coming together, with us all sort of coming together and finding this collective common purpose, right? Even in the midst of this virus thing. Notice what's also happening. Notice how people are pulling together and coming together more. Again, that's very Jupiterian. We're looking at the bigger picture, and we're, wishing each other well and looking to support each other, and we're being sequestered and quarantined and all those things, which is the powerful Saturn energy. So we see the really strong Saturn saying, okay, we need to sacrifice and suffer for our common good. And we see the Jupiter, which is be inspired, remember your teachings, remember the highest possibility. So this is kind of where we're starting. We also have the Sun is now in Pisces. We also have Venus in Aries. Mercury is in Aquarius. Mercury had just gone retrograde. Mars is also here in Sagittarius. So Mars is infusing those teachings with a lot of hope, with a lot of drive and a lot of, purpose and a lot of courage. It's about to get even more so And the nodes are in this Gemini Sagittarius axis. And yes, we have the Kalasarpa Yoga, all the planets between Rahu and Ketu. Okay. So if we go forward, though, I want you to look at a couple things that are going to shift. First of all, Mars and Jupiter are both going to go into Capricorn, and then Venus is going to go into Taurus. So again, we're here on the 17th. I'm going to run this forward in a week increment. So this time next week on the 24th, Mars, by this time next week on March 24th, Mars will now be in Capricorn as well. So Mars is going to pass Jupiter totally and go into Capricorn, where now we have exalted Mars also here. So in the next week, and by this time next week, there's going to be much more of this Capricorn focus, this focus on Capricorn energy, which is, again, about trying to survive hardship and difficulty. That's the nature of Capricorn, is surviving hardship and difficulty. When powerful planets are in Capricorn, we're able to survive difficulty and hardship. So again, the fact that Saturn is in Capricorn is great news. It's better to have Saturn in Capricorn while we're dealing with something like this than to have Saturn in Sagittarius, where we're too hopeful. Again, Saturn in Sagittarius, and we're just, it'll all work out somehow. No, Saturn in Capricorn says, no, it's going to work out because we're going to quarantine and do this stuff and be willing to be inconvenienced. Mars goes in there and says, okay, now we got to get focused and serious, and all of that vitality and that vital spirit and energy is there. Mars wants to destroy what's making us weak. So we're going to see the activity ramp up and accelerate here globally as the globe starts to really come together here to try to eradicate this thing, which of course we're going to do. But as you see, starting next week, this Mars is going into Sagittarius, going into Capricorn. Okay, now he'll be there until early May. But then by the next week, Jupiter will also be there. So then in 2 weeks, Jupiter will also be in Capricorn, right? The first thing, debilitated. Okay, yes, that's the debilitated sign. But don't say debilitated without also looking at Nietzsche Banga. Okay, debilitated the word is Nietzsche, and Banga means modification or reversal or support. So yes, Jupiter's in the debilitated sign, but it has two of the most powerful Nietzsche Banga factors. One is it's joined an exalted planet, and two, it's joined its ruler. So the difficulty of Jupiter being debilitated is the most difficult problem is the lack of hope that can come. We're already feeling a kind of stress and worry. We're hopeful on the cusp of what's going to happen. We're like, well, I hope it works out. I hope it's going to be not so hard. Well, guess what? It's going to be hard. Let me shatter your illusions. It's going to be hard. Doesn't mean we won't survive it, but it's not going to be easy. This is shown by that. Not going to be easy. But Mars is going to be there working hard. Saturn is going to be there trying to keep things under control, bringing this cold rationale. But Jupiter here for 3 months, because he's here from the end of March until the end of June. But Jupiter here is showing where this is going to start, where we could start to lose hope. That's one of the biggest difficulties about Jupiter in Capricorn, because Jupiter is where we're looking for hope and inspiration. So you got to get clear about the inspiration now and dial in the hope and inspiration now while Jupiter is in Sagittarius. Because when he goes into Capricorn, it can be hard to remember and you might lose hope. So dial in the hope now. And remember, this is why I did an update a couple days ago. And I'm going to talk before I end here about things to do. But this is the world. This is the nature of the world. Nothing has changed fundamentally about the nature of the world. Maybe it's impacting you a little bit more now. if you're living a life of comfort, like most of us are, like, at least most of us watching this, or many of us are, there are people all over the world who are suffering all the time, and they get through it. We have these great teachings, and more than that, we have these practices that we do. Practices that can keep us strong, that keep us physically strong, like pranayama, powerful breathing exercises like Kapalabhati and Bhastrika, where we purify and pump the energy, pump the prana into the body and the mind to keep us physically strong and mentally clear and shaktified and pranified. We need to be doing those practices now, and we're going to continue to do them when Mars and Saturn are in Capricorn with Jupiter. You've heard me talk about this before, but I'll reinforce it or reinstate it now. Is the difference between Sagittarius and Capricorn is this, what I'm talking about. Sagittarius, we're often very inspired by our teachings. Capricorn is where we need to do them. We need to put them into practice. Capricorn is about implementation and practice, not inspiration and hope. That's Sagittarius. Capricorn is practice. So now we're going to be putting into practice these teachings. Okay? So we have this starting at the end of March, in a couple weeks, Mars, Sun, and Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, rather, in Capricorn. You can see here in the early part, at the end of March, we have a planetary war. Mars and Saturn are right on top of each other for a few days. Again, that's late March, early April. Okay, so that's going to be quite intense for sure. But by then, we also see that Venus has now gone into Taurus. Now, again, this is a very auspicious transit. Venus is going to be in Taurus for 4 months, starting at the end. I think it's the 27th. Let me just go back days. 2, 3, 28th. On March 28th, Venus enters. So you could say by the 29th, Venus is there. And by the 30th, Jupiter is there. So again, by the 31st, they're both sort of in there. So you could see by 27th, 28th, Venus will go into Taurus. And Venus is going to be there for 4 months because it's going to go retrograde here as well. Oh, I wanted to mention this before I forget, because I do forget. All of this focus on Capricorn energy is very important. I have put together, for those of you who don't know, because I get a lot of new viewers, this 2020 forecast where people can learn about the nature of what's going to happen, the most important shifts for this year. And you can see this sign of Capricorn is so important this year, and you want to know what it means for your sign. Again, this sign of Capricorn is important for the next 3 years because Saturn is there. And I did this 2020 forecast, and again, one of the main parts of the forecast, you can see how much I talked about these times we're in right now. Again, I did this last year. I didn't just do this a couple weeks ago. The first shift I talked about was January 24th, Saturn enters Capricorn. And on this free web class, you can get it by going to 2020vedicastrology.com. I talk about 10 important shifts in general for everyone, but then this sign of Capricorn and Saturn in Capricorn for the next 3 years for your sign. Now, you can see how loaded it is, January 24th, and then I skip March 22nd through May 4th, Mars exalted in Capricorn. March 29th through June 9th, Jupiter in Capricorn. And then this time, March 29th through May the 4th, you have all 3 of them there. So you could see how important this is. And I talked about this in general in a lot of detail on this free web class. Then I also talk about other things, which is Saturn turning retrograde, Jupiter turning retrograde, May 10th through May and May 14th through September, right? So we have these retrograde cycles. I also talk about June 18th through the end of the year. Mars is in either Pisces or Aries. Again, very important shift. You want to know how this is going to work. Also talk about June 21st, solar eclipse in Gemini. September 19th, Rahu and Ketu change signs. And then December, we have a solar eclipse in Scorpio. So I talk about all of these things in general. And then I also talk about this sign of Capricorn, which is where all these planets are. And I talk about that for your sign and all 12 signs this year, because it's very important to know that this year. So I wanted to say that before I forget. So let's get back here. At the end of March, we have Venus now also in Taurus, where it's going to be for 4 months until early August. So again, this is great because Venus is the planet of healing, of bringing great healing energy into the world. Just in general, you like to see Venus influencing things when we're trying to heal and give comfort and care to each other. Now, Venus is in its own sign here, Taurus, which is about stability, structure, preservation, again, nurturing, even more so than Libra. Venus also rules Libra, which is the sign that it also rules. And it's, Libra is more of an intellectual air sign, more about ideas and, social benefit. Taurus is literally about things like care and, like nurturing and support. It's a fixed earth sign where Venus energy is the most concentrated and stabilized. So you like to see things stabilizing with powerful planets in Taurus, particularly Venus, because Venus is the ruler. So this is fantastic, great news for us starting to, let's say, globally stabilize this. Now, again, one of the things that have been happening is that we have, even now they're testing some, some treatments that could perhaps, mitigate the spread of the virus, treat it, or develop sort of protocols where the, common people can treat it, with maybe over the counter or whatever. Right now, the entire world is focused on this. Globally, the entire world is focused on defeating it. This is what we're going to see. This is the power. We're seeing it right now, even with Mars, Jupiter, and Sagittarius, but we're still kind of hoping it's not going to be as bad, or we're still trying to stem the tide of that and try to find, a cure and whatnot. But when we get all this energy in Capricorn, again, exalted Mars, powerful Saturn, which is about energy and enthusiasm, concentration, not giving up just because it's hard. That's what Saturn does. Jupiter is also there, where we're putting our beliefs into practice. Service is huge. Get out and help if you can. But then Venus going through Taurus, again, very, very powerful. Couldn't be much better as far as Venus. You have a pandemic coming. Look, these placements are about as best as you could hope for in the midst of something like this. All these exalted, Saturn in its own sign, Mars exalted, Venus in its own sign for 4 months. That is fantastic. If there was ever planetary configurations that would be beneficial to where we are right now, it's this. It couldn't be much more beneficial. But it gets better. But wait. No, it does. Watch. I take this forward 2 weeks, and now we have exalted Sun. So then we're going to get the Sun exalted in the middle of April. Now, of course, the Sun is the planet of vitality, of heat, light, Agni, which is the purifying light that restores the power. Okay? We get exalted Sun in the middle of April, and these other things haven't moved yet. Mars is still in the middle of Capricorn. Saturn is still here. Venus is going to be here till August. So look at all these. We have exalted Sun, exalted Mars, Saturn in its own sign, and Venus in its own sign. for about a month. That's from the middle of April until the middle of May. Again, this is very auspicious. Or actually, Mars leaves here in early May, but at least, yeah, for a couple weeks. That's what. Yeah, that's right. Because then if we go forward a week, Mars is 21. Then by the next week, okay, by the 28th, Mars is here. But then he just moves in on May 5th. But look how all those other planets are still there. So again, notice how from April 14th until early May, so it's like almost 3 weeks, we have all of those exalted and dignified planets. And they're all related to healing. Again, again, Saturn about staying the course, working hard and fixing it and not turning away because it's too hard and I want to just make it all go away. No, Saturn's like, okay, let's do it. Let's survive. Saturn is the planet that allows you to survive crisis. And again, we're more scared than we are lacking in our ability to overcome. We're, again, we only have to fear is fear itself. We're more afraid of what might happen. As long as we're smart about it and strategic, like all this social distancing and all that, it's going to pay off. It's going to be hard though, but we'll get through it. Unfortunately, some people will die. And that's what you see with Capricorn as well. There's going to be some deaths. And it's going to be sad and tragic. But as a species, as a culture, we'll get through it. It could also show some more financial difficulty when Jupiter goes into Capricorn. But we'll get through it. But this is showing us beating back the tide, working hard, willing to do it, showing up for each other as well, especially with this powerful Venus in Taurus and then exalted Sun. So again, then we run this through a week. And then we even have another day where even the moon, which the moon moves very quickly, we have this very auspicious day called Akshaya Tritiya. Now, Akshaya Tritiya is the day each year when the sun is in its exalted sign, and so is the moon. And it's on the third lunar day. It's on Tritiya of the waxing moon. And so when we have the sun in its exalted sign, and then we have waxing, when we have Shukla Tritiya, like we have here, Shukla Tritiya, which means waxing Tritiya, the third lunar day, it's called Akshaya Tritiya, which is perhaps the most auspicious day of the year, every year. This is the day when it's like the most auspicious day of the year to kind of do anything, to get married, to buy things, to heal. If you can start a healing regimen on Akshaya Tritiya, it's fantastic. If you want to make a purchase, it's fantastic. Anything, it's the most auspicious day of the year just because of these two planets. Just because of that. Just because we have exalted sun and exalted moon at the same time. And it's Tritiya, so again, when it's Dwitya, it's still a little bit too close to the sun. So they wait until it's Tritiya. This is the auspicious day. But again, look at this Akshaya Tritiya. This Akshaya Tritiya is happening on the same day as all of that other stuff I just said. Of this Venus and Taurus, of this exalted sun, which we already have, of this exalted Mars, of Saturn and Capricorn, all of that is happening. This is why I said this date, April 25th, this is one of the most auspicious days for humanity that we could ever have, almost, with all these planets. The only planets, by the way, I didn't even mention this, but I should. Many consider, and I do as well, that Rahu and Ketu in this axis are also, if not exalted, in their highest place. I think this is the best place for Rahu and Ketu, is in Gemini Sagittarius. So it might not seem like it. I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to make the prediction right now. It might not seem like it, even on that day or days before, but something is going to happen where something wildly auspicious around this time. You can't have this many dignified planets at this long of a time. And then also have Akshaya Tritiya happen without some incredible grace descending on the earth plane, without some incredible, as I say, just gracious event, situation suddenly be revealed. That's why I said, maybe it'll be a cure to this. Maybe it'll be a cure, or some amazing news will come out around this time, or we'll start to see something shift around this time. And yes, I'm making the prediction. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. But look at all of this auspicious energy. Pretty much every planet around this time. And again, then Akshaya Tritiya goes. Okay, now it's still exalted. And then the moon goes. But then look, these planets are still there. All these planets are still there until early May. And then Mars leaves. Okay, Mars leaves. But then you still have Saturn, the Sun, and Venus in their own signs. Saturn and Venus are going to be here in this placement until August. Again, Saturn and Venus are extremely powerful for healing, for, again, service, caretaking, making sure to work through things, not give up, to be determined, to do what needs to be done even though it's hard, sacrifice. These are all the things that we're going to need right now that we all can see. We all can see that ahead. We can all see that things are different, that we're going to be challenged, that there's going to be pressure, that we're going to have to sacrifice a little bit. And that Saturn, it shows by this Saturn in Capricorn. So, and that we need to take care of each other. We need to heal each other. We need to, even take care of the caretakers. Again, all this Venus stuff. So again, if we run this forward, again, this is into May. Now what happens is the sun goes into Taurus. Venus turns retrograde on May 13th. But then the sun joins, and then the sun has joined Venus in its own sign. Now, Venus is retrograde and it's combust. And again, this could actually be a time, let me just say very directly, where Venus turning retrograde around this time could actually be where we start to see a reversal of things, where we start to see the tide reversing in a big way, like the middle of May, this Venus retrograde. We could see where all of that effort starts to reverse, and we start seeing, okay, this is going to go on the decline now. It could very well mean that. And again, I'm hopeful that's what it means, and it could certainly mean that. Especially where we're at right now, because we know we're looking at a kind of a wave that's coming. And it's just a matter of how big is that wave going to be. And like I said, we're going to get the wave. The wave is going to hit. You can see it. You can see it's coming. Again, we're right here now. We're like right here. And we see that we're going to be here. We see we're going to have all this Capricorn energy. We're going to be working hard at it, but we got Venus there helping to assist and nurture and serve. And then the sun comes to purify. Again, also this transit of the sun here is really powerful, because the sun is literally like the vitality, the vitalization coming. I think, again, this is April 13th. So it's about a month. Again, perhaps, let's say, we start to really bust our tail now, and for a month, with all of the social, distancing and the self-quarantining and all, and within a month, and not just that, but also maybe like building extra safeguards into the system where there's enough hospital beds or other kinds of things, supporting doctors and whatnot. We could really start to see, especially support for the medical profession and for those who need to be cared for. because this could be a time when, again, there's a lot of need for, treatment and all of that. And so this sun going into Aries in a month is like whoosh. It's like a jolt of vitality and light and an infusion of energy right at that time, when it might be the most, where we might start feeling, this is too hard, we're not going to get there. And then the middle of April, the sun goes into Aries, and there can be like a revitalizing of energy, right? And then, of course, by the time we get to the 25th, and the sun has been there for about 10 days, we have this Akshaya Tritiya around this time. Again, we might not see it on the front, but I bet you we're going to find that April 25th, 2020, something incredible happened. We might not see it when it happens. It might be happening behind the scenes, but it'll come out. And then Venus turns retrograde May 13th, and I think this transit of Venus, this retrograde, could really maybe start to turn the tide around, maybe start to reverse the difficulty here. Then Venus turns forward again, it goes direct, and then it winds up leaving and going into Gemini by August. I think by then we'll have a good handle on it. That's my feeling and my hope. And you guys, sorry, I'm laughing. I love his hair like that too. Talking about me. Okay. All right. Anyway, but so this is a big part of what I wanted to share, because there's so much auspiciousness in the astrology now, and even though, again, there's difficulty right now that we're looking at, we couldn't be facing it with better planetary energy. It literally couldn't be more auspicious on some level. If we're looking at a pandemic, this is the kind of thing I want to see. Saturn is already in Capricorn. Now Mars is coming. The sun is about to be exalted. Venus is going to be in its own sign for 4 months. What more do we want? What more do we want? We're going to make it. And your part is to not just become a triggered lunatic, if I can be so diplomatic. You do your practices. This is the time, and that's also shown with Saturn in Capricorn now and Jupiter, Mars, and Sagittarius. It's a time for you to put those teachings into practice now. Be inspired now, so that when Jupiter moves into Capricorn and Mars moves, and we're dealing with some of this heavier energy. Again, this is where we are now. Look, Mars and Jupiter are like exact. This is why you got me going at you right now. I'm Mars, Jupiter with Ketu and Sag right now, and Saturn and Capricorn going, do it, right? Maybe them showing up for you that way. Do the practices now, especially more than ever. Those of you who aren't doing spiritual practices, you're not doing any of this stuff. It's all just thinking that astrological predictions and all are going to save you or something. It's not. This is showing what's happening in the world. The only thing that's going to save you is your sadhana, is your spiritual practice. And you have it totally within your own power. You know, again, things like pranayama, especially. You know, there's pranayama called Kapalabhati, which I do, which is where you pump the chest, pump the air out. Hear that? That's my lungs. That's my lungs. You don't hear any mucus and phlegm in there because I'm pumping it out. And what that does is it brings enormous fire and purification to your lungs. it purifies and burns off all of that accumulated toxins that come from the environment, from your diet, from the accumulated toxins. You do that pranayama, right? It brings this fire into your nasal passages, into your whole respiratory system. You do anuloma viloma, alternate nostril breathing with deep retention. Again, you're purifying the whole system of nadis. Your energy doesn't flow just through this physical body. Your physical body takes in oxygen. That's the chemical. But oxygen becomes prana in the mind, in your energetic body. When your energetic body, or when your physical body is loaded with that oxygen and that vitality, your mind is filled with prana and vitality and consciousness. And you're not just triggered. And you're also not so susceptible to these bugs, these viruses. And yes, they're real. You could be doing pranayama and still get it, of course. But I'll tell you this, it's much harder for a virus to attach and go down and get into your lungs and then screw with you like that when you're purified and when you're doing this kind of kriya is what it's called. You think great yogis, great yoga masters who do these things, and you don't have to be a great yoga master, but even just someone who does these kind of kriyas, these purification exercises, are that worried about this kind of thing? Of course they're worried, and nobody wants to get it. I don't want to get it. I don't want anybody to get it. And I'm not tempting fate, thinking, oh, I'm so powerful it couldn't hurt me. It could hurt me. I'm not taking any chances. I don't want that bug. Nobody should want it. What I'm saying, though, is that you create the environment of disease, and then that's how these things become extremely virulent. If you're eating a lot of bad food and all kinds of things where your system isn't already pure, and most of your body energy and vitality is trying to digest this terrible food and try to not get sick and deal with the bloating and the indigestion and the constipation and the other bad habits. When most of your body's energy is doing all of that, then something like a coronavirus gets in there, and there's nothing to fight against because your body's already spending so much of its energy just trying to, for instance, digest the horrible food you might have eaten. And it's not even really extracting a lot of nutrients from it. So that's why you eat nutrient-dense food. You only eat the right amount. Water, all of this is why nutritional food, it doesn't drain your body, it replenishes it. So many people have a diet that drains their body. It doesn't replenish it. It simply takes from it and leaches. So again, now is the time with Jupiter, Mars in Sagittarius. You're being challenged to put your teachings into practice. You believe all this stuff. Are you doing it? I hope you are. Because the next cycle is going to get serious. It's also going to get real. You're going to get the consequences of this stuff. When Mars goes in there and then Jupiter goes in there, things are going to get harder. And if you don't have the reserve and you're not doing the teachings and you're not doing the practices, now all of this is in Capricorn, and now you're terrified and freaked out and more triggered. The reason you're more triggered is because you're also less walking the talk now. Those who are walking the talk, we might feel the trigger as well, but we're going to also get the power. It's simultaneous. I know it's coming. This is what astrology helps you with. It helps you understand what's going on. You don't fix it with astrology. You understand it. You fix it with yoga and Ayurveda and the other practices. That's what the practices are for. You're not going to intellectually conquer the universe. You use Jyotish the way I'm using it so we can see what's coming and we can align with that. So we know, okay, right now, this is why I might be feeling a little irritable right now. I say right now because we have because we're like right here. This is why maybe you're feeling a little frustrated and irritable and anxious. And it's because you're not putting the teachings into practice. You can sense there's something there, but you're frustrated. What do? Well, you need to do the practices. Then instead of being frustrated and irritable, maybe at others or whatever, now you're disciplined and focused, and you're walking the talk. So again, we got about a week to do that before Mars. By this time next week, Mars is in Capricorn. And again, the stress level goes up, but also the level of mastery, because Mars in Capricorn is much more contained. Mars in Sagittarius, and we're still kind of wanting to fight something external, or we're still wanting to crusade for our philosophies. By this time next week, Mars in Capricorn says, okay, I get it. So I want you to remember this next week, even if you're not doing a lot of spiritual practice. Next week, you're probably going to want to feel like doing it more, because Mars is going to be in Capricorn, and it's also going to be a little more scary. It's going to scare you a little bit more. Right now, it's like, I don't need to do my spiritual practices. Jupiter's here. It's Sagittarius. Yay, I can get by. Okay. Next week, it's in Capricorn, where it's like, oops, now I really feel it. So now I better really concentrate. That's why Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Mars energy, we can just not take it seriously. We can just, I'll fight here, I'll fight there, I'll fight here, I'll fight there. Who cares? I'm a fighter. That's what I do. I'll shoot my mouth off, blah, blah. Capricorn says, okay, now try it. Here's the consequences of that. Here's the consequences of that undisciplined nature. That's why Capricorn exalts Mars, because we can just be like some young, hotshot, big mouth. Capricorn shows the consequences of that, and especially with Saturn there. So all of that part of you that thinks, okay, well, in my opinion, it's just that. My opinion, I think that's all Mars. Watch and see what that's going to show up like next week when it goes into Capricorn and it's with Saturn. So I'm telling you now, while you can still feel the hope and it's there with Jupiter, remember this, get in alignment. Because again, in Capricorn, one of the biggest things that can happen is we can forget our teachings, because now we're dealing with the stress. Remember that. So I wanted to bring this up and show you this, because this is what's coming. Great auspicious transits coming for the next several months. A lot to look at and observe and feel and align with in your own heart, align with in your own consciousness, because these are all energies of consciousness and awareness, regardless of the dignity of the planets or anything like that. That's what they always are. And so with you at this point, it's very much about seeing what's coming and let it deepen your connection to self. It's not, you're not just this body. You're the eternal self. And you've never stopped being that, and you will never stop being that. So again, I also just wanted to say again that you can also, for those of you who haven't registered, you can register for the 2020 forecast, where you can see how 10 of the most important shifts will affect you. Again, I did this last year, and you can see how I focused on this time right now. I was like, we got big stuff happening. As you see, the way I described Mars going into Capricorn shows the capacity to fight for the long-term goal, not just pop off, fighting the good fight. That's what we're all going to be aligned with. And again, we have a collective relationship with the world, but day to day, the world is showing up inside of you. It's your capacity here. Like I just said, Jupiter Capricorn is debilitated. A loss of hope and inspiration may be revealed. Now, it may be hard to remember our teachings. Now, you want to know how this is going to impact a certain specific area of your life, because it's going to happen in Capricorn, and I talk about that for each of the 12 signs on this web class. And in particular, March 29th through May 4th, when Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are all in Capricorn, showing a lot of Capricorn power and potential weakness, like I just described. Saturn and Mars will give strength, but we may lose hope, like I just said. So, and then there's also a bunch of other shifts that I talk about. May 10th, Saturn retrograde until September 28th. Shows us reflecting all we are committed to and making sure the expenditure of energy is worth it. Again, this is very specific to each person, as I described on the web class. So if you're Aries, it's different than if you're Leo. And I talk about that on the web class. Jupiter retrograde until September 12th. So we are reflecting on our teachings and may even challenge our teachers and beliefs. So it's really a time for you not just to be questioning your external teachings, but mainly question what a good student you are. Again, we tend to blame our teachers for everything. Our teachers can show up and give us everything they have, and we put forth this much effort, and then they were okay, and we didn't even try. In order to benefit from teachings, you also need to be a good student. You also need to listen once in a while and not just let it go in one ear and out the other. And that's really a big thing of what happens with Jupiter in Capricorn as well. And when he's retrograde, like I'm talking about here, we're reflecting on our teachings and how well we've heard them and whether or not those teachings are in alignment and whether or not, even if they were, we listened to them very well. So June 18th until the end of the year, Mars is either in Pisces or Aries. Again, this is also going to be very big in this coronavirus. Again, I didn't talk about that on the web class, but this is very important for you to hear how Mars in Pisces or Aries is going to be influencing the world. Then June 21st, solar eclipse in Gemini. Obsession and deeper promise relative to information and communication. How important you think this solar eclipse in Gemini is going to be now, looking at the world we have with communication. Nakshatra is Mrigashira, showing a new and hopeful possibility on this eclipse. So how important is communication and information right now, especially in the midst of things like elections and the news and the dispensation of information in the midst of pandemics or whatever the heck we're going to be dealing with by then. Then Rahu Ketu changed signs September 19th. Again, a huge shift that I'm going to be talking about. And then also a solar eclipse in Scorpio at the end of the year. So these are all things, it's free for you to come to it. And it's just my gift for you to attend. And so this is very, very powerful time that's coming up again, as I've just shown. And again, just to show this astrological weather, again, right now, one second. So right now we're here. We're here on the 17th. So next week, we're up here with Mars join Saturn. A week from that, we have Jupiter, Mars join Saturn in Capricorn. Hard work and effort. It's going to get real. So get ready for it and be ready for it. Be a powerful yogi. You're the immortal Atman. So act like it. You're not just some sad little creature begging for power. You have all the power. You just don't use it and you don't unlock it. You need to unlock that power with spiritual practices. Again, by that time, in a couple weeks, Venus will have moved into Taurus, showing all of this healing grace flowing toward us for 4 months. Then within a couple weeks later, the sun goes into Aries, where it's exalted now for 30 days. Again, Venus in its own sign, exalted sun, exalted Mars, Saturn in its own sign, and even the nodes in their Mula Trikona or exalted signs. Then we have a few days later, the most auspicious day of the year, Akshaya Tritiya, which is auspicious in itself. Akshaya Tritiya is auspicious with exalted sun and exalted moon. But this one happens also with this Venus in Taurus, with exalted Mars and Saturn in its own sign. Incredible day, April 25th, 2020. Amazing things are going to happen around that time. If we don't hear about it then, we'll hear about it later. You're seeing why I'm saying this. And then the sun, even then the sun joins, and then Venus turns retrograde, which I think is going to be an important moment, hopefully in stemming the tide, May 13th, hopefully in really starting to gain some momentum on this at that time, hopefully. I think that's what it means, that there's going to be a reversal of something related to Venus, which, of course, in this context, I think I'm interpreting this as Venus is bringing a lot of care and a lot of structure. Now, you might say that the care would start to reverse. I'm not interpreting it that way because of all of the other structure and power there, because of the exalted planets and the sun and all that. I think it's going to show a reversal of the virus. It's going to start to abate strongly at that time. Like we might see some serious steps that what we're doing is working. It might even mean that shortly thereafter we can stop the quarantining, hopefully. And maybe even before then we can stop the quarantining or something like that. And then by this time we'll see a big shift. I'm hoping. I'm being hopeful. It could drag out more. It could drag out through August or something. I'm hopeful that it won't because of these planets. I'm not just saying it. It's not just blind faith. I'm showing you why I'm saying this. So you're seeing it just like I am. Astrologers that want to dispute that, you're free to do it. Dispute why you think I'm wrong, I'd like to hear it. But this is the way I interpret it, that it's this power to get in there and fight the disease, come together. Again, I will also say that definitely I think we're going to see more of a financial hit, though, just because of Jupiter, particularly, once Jupiter first goes into Capricorn, I think we could see more of this, maybe global financial markets get really, really unhappy. I think that. Again, I'd love to be wrong about that, and I might be because we have all this Nichabanga here. I could be wrong. But particularly maybe once Mars leaves and Saturn turns retrograde, especially around this time, let's say the middle of May, while we have Venus turning retrograde, maybe stemming the tide on some of the virus, we might see the stock market getting worse. I don't know. Maybe this is reversing the stock market problems as well. I don't know. I don't predict stock market stuff very well, to be honest with you. We can definitely see, and I already talked about, just because of the conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, I actually did a video on it yesterday, that we're seeing the pressure on the stock market now. And maybe like as soon as Jupiter goes into Capricorn, we'll see more of that. And then hopefully it'll start to improve as significators improve. I'll revisit that. Again, all astrologers should be honest about what they pay attention to and look at really well. I don't predict this stuff very well or very often. I could see trends like I did yesterday I did a video yesterday because the last time we had Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, we also had a major stock market correction with the .com bursting. This is similar to that. That's why I did it. I would say probably just knowing what I know is that Jupiter in Capricorn could continue that lowering of the stock market especially, and even of the economy, but I hope it doesn't filter down and hurt the economy as bad as it could. So we'll leave it at that as far as this is concerned. But I mainly wanted to say that there is definitely hope. There could even be something like a cure, or if not a cure for the virus itself, where it's a shot that you could take, a vaccine. There could very well be ways that we can treat and mitigate the effects. I think we'll get that. I think it'll come soon. The whole world is focused on this. Look, The world doesn't want all of our money to collapse and all that. We want stuff to be, flourishing and growing. And so the world is mobilized around this, and the astrology shows that we have good cause to be hopeful, if not cautious, and ready to work hard. So again, last thing I'll say, this is what yoga and yogis do. They say, okay, yoga is hard. Spiritual growth, especially enlightenment and all that, is hard. It is fraught with suffering and difficulty and stress, and moments externally that pressure us give us this opportunity. If nothing else, we have the opportunity to be alone now. What are you doing in your alone time? ODing on the news and stressing yourself out, or tuning in to what's deeper? You can check on what's happening in the world. You don't need to obsess over it and be completely white-knuckle terrified about it. If you are, you're not doing anything spiritual. You're not helping anyone, least of all yourself. Instead, purify. Do those yogic practices, those kriyas. Connect with those teachings, put them into practice, and really read and connect with the inspiring teachings of the great saints and the great Mahatmas. That's why I was sharing things with my guru Amma recently, and her initiating all these swamis. And instead of ODing on bad news and virus, thought viruses and internet viruses about how this is really the 5G and all this, all the conspiracies and all the terrifying things that you could spin out on, connect with good teachings. This is your challenge. This is your Jupiter, Mars. This is your challenge now. What are you really inspired by? What teachings are you really following? Again, we think we're spiritual, and then stuff like this happens, and all of a sudden we forget it all. And then the things we're following is, oh my God, what's going to happen? And think that's your teaching at that point. That's what's inspiring you. That's what's motivating you, if that's what you're listening to. So tune into the teachings of the great masters about the nature of the world, the nature of Maya. Purify yourself, get strong, do your practices, do the best you can. And we'll all get through it. We can see what the astrology is showing. That's what the astrology is showing. And you just saw it yourself. I'm not just preaching, I'm showing you. I'm showing you back and forth these transits and why I'm saying the things I'm saying. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And we'll pray for the best. And again, if you think this was helpful, and I hope you did, share it with others. And by the way, subscribe to the channel, get notified if you like this video. And again, I'm going to keep doing updates about this stuff. I'm never one who is making these gloom and doom predictions about how we're all going to run out of food and be fighting each other and rioting and all this. I don't think that's going to happen. I've seen astrologers make predictions like this and be wrong over and over and over again. The same astrologers. And they're saying, and some of them are saying the same things now. It's a good thing that people have a short memory, because I've heard some astrologers say the same stuff every year in their annual predictions. It never happens. They say it every year, and everybody still says how great they are. Okay. I'm not trying to diss anybody. I'm just saying my part is to not play into all of that, not because it's not possible, but I don't think it's likely, especially in this climate. And I showed you why. I showed you the dignity of the planets, the power of the planets, the power and strength within you, aside from all of that. Because even if that stuff might be true and the astrologer gets the prediction right, what was the benefit of triggering everybody? So again, I don't think that's useful, beneficial, or accurate, because it also ignores the fact that it's, even if there is fighting in the streets and riots and all of that stuff, you're still going to be the imperishable soul. You're still going to be untouched by it all. in essence, you are not this body, this world, or any of that. And your reason for being here is to awaken to that. That never changes. I don't care what happens in the world. It never changes. And if you just forget it because things are hard, you've not done, then you're not doing your work. And as astrologers or healers or teachers, most I see are doing great work. But I still see the same ones that have to get out and fearmonger about things. And I think it's unfortunate. So again, you choose who you follow and listen to and pay attention to externally and internally. That's your job. No one can do that for you. And you find the teacher that you resonate with. This is what they always say. When the student is ready, the guru shows up. But that means the guru shows up that the teacher is looking for. So if you're looking for those kinds of teachings and looking to have that validate the world you want, then that's what you're doing. I hope you tune into higher teachings and higher wisdom. I promise to do my part and keep talking about these things. And I appreciate your time and attention being here, and you have a good one.